This is part 2. It looks like part 2 of a 3-part message. Part 2 will be about 10 minutes. Part 3 will be about 10 minutes. We're talking tonight about tight places. The process of receiving the promise. It's the place that's between you and your destiny. And we've been reading from Matthew chapter 26, 36 through 46. Just recently, I read a story about a bridge called the Silver Bridge. And it's the bridge that goes over the Ohio River. And it was built in 1928. And it was an I-bar chain suspension bridge. But in December 15th of 1967, that Silver Bridge collapsed right in the middle of rush hour traffic, and 46 people lost their lives, and 2 victims were never found out of those 46. And it's very interesting because when they did the investigation of the collapse of that bridge, the cause of that collapse was a failure of a single I-bar in the suspension chain that was only 2.5 millimeters deep. That's 1/10 of an inch deep. It also showed that the bridge at the time of collapse was carrying much more heavier loads than it was originally designed. And it was also poorly maintained through those years. Understand something. The bridge did not collapse due to dynamite, due to explosives. Too many things went across that bridge. Old Faithful of 1928 became Old Falling in 1967. There's Jesus in the garden trying to stop that crack, that 2.5 millimeters deep crack that's in his life. 5,000 of his disciples have left him. 70 disciples have left him. And Jesus told the 12 to wait here. And I'm going to go a little further. As pressure gets tighter and tighter, we begin to separate ourselves more and more because we realize that no one's going through this but me. It's just like having a baby. I think it's hilarious how the man always says we're having a baby, but it's the woman that's actually having the baby. The man is in the hospital room. He's only looking at the machines, and he's telling the wife when the contractions are coming. And you know what? That might be okay for the first 3 hours, but eventually that wife looks at that husband and says, "Baby, shut up. I know, because the internal pressure that I'm feeling right now is telling me when the contractions are coming." Holding my hand and saying all this cute stuff doesn't connect you to the suffering I'm going through. And right now in my life, right now in your life, you're going through hell and people don't even seem to understand. But understand this, in the garden, this is Jesus' baby. It's his contractions, it's his stress, it's his pressure. He even takes his inner circle, Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and he asked them to agree with him in prayer. We do the same thing as Christians. We ask people to agree with us in prayer all the time. And what do? Of course, they agree. They say they agree. But as soon as we walk away, as soon as they walk away, what do they say? Bless them, Lord. because they don't want to forget to pray for them later. Because you know why? They do. They don't continue to pray because they don't feel the pressure that you're feeling. They're not the ones trying to deliver that baby. They're not the one in the middle of that garden. They're not the one in the tight place. Jesus comes back to his disciples. Not that he thinks they have more clout to the Father than he does, but he comes back to them for fellowship. The Bible even says that I may know him in the fellowship of his suffering. That I may know him in the fellowship of his suffering. That same verse goes on to say that everyone wants to know him in the power of his resurrection. Everyone wants to know Jesus in the resurrection. But nobody wants to fellowship with him in the midst of his suffering. It'd be nice if someone could fellowship with me in my suffering. It'd be nice if someone could fellowship with you in the middle of your suffering. Jesus walks up to his disciples, and what does he find? He finds them asleep. And you can see the frustration on his face. You can hear it in his voice. Can't you even watch with me 1 hour? You can't even seem to connect with me in what I'm going through. Just be with me. Just your presence alone. All of your support base is gone. Everyone you call, their line is busy. Everyone you reach out to, they're distracted. The pressure's mounting. You're in your tight place. You're having your baby. You're mounting up. And you're standing alone, just like in a vice. And the pressure's getting tighter and tighter. And desperate people do desperate things because we continue to run around and we continue to ask people, are you with me? Okay, I'll come back later. And I ask you tonight, what keeps making us go back to people that are not even connected to our fellowship of our suffering? I know you're going to be asleep, and you'll probably be asleep later when I come back. But when we're under pressure, we reach out for stuff and for people that are not even connected. God can't even get the glory in our life. God can't even get the glory in our life until the expectations of expecting other people is removed. Can't tell you how long that's going to be, because Jesus went back 3 times checking on people who were not even connected. They were somewhere else while he was under pressure. Jesus goes back and forth from his disciples to his Father, and he gets no relief. The cup isn't removed. His disciples aren't fellowshipping. Because sometimes you and I have to pray through. It's a process of finding God. The tight place is a process of finding God. It's not going to be a microwavable slam dunk Johnny come easy process, because even Apostle Paul had to pray 3 times, remove this thorn. What did Jesus say? My grace is sufficient. You may never be appreciated, but understand God has you covered. You don't need what you thought you needed. You don't need who you thought you needed. All you need is God's grace. This is the end of part 2. Connect to part 3 to hear the amazing ending.